Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for the chapter 253 review of Akatsuki no Yona, also known as Yona of the Dawn. I'm not going to burst your eardrums. I'm not going to hurt your eardrums. Because this is one hell of a solemn chapter. And I do have some things to talk about. It took me a couple days to think about what to say other than everybody called it. Everybody knew this was going to happen. It's not really theorized when it's so basic and so obvious, right? So though it's a very sad chapter, I believe there are 4 parts to this chapter, okay? It's a very short chapter, and that's a problem. We'll bring that up in part 3. But there are 4 parts to this chapter, okay? Part 1 is the somber, solemn, tragedy, sad, whatever you want to call it. Whatever synonym you want to use, right? It's very sad that not so much that Zeno wants to die, but the fact that he is willing to capture the dragons, kill the dragons, end the cycle and stuff for noble, honest reasons aside. It's very sad that he's breaking the hearts of Yona and Hawk. He's leaving the group. He's taking the dragons with him, and they'll never see him again, and all that stuff. That part of it, yes, very sad. Solomon, on a very basic level, it's like, oh my God, how could Zeno do this? Poor Hawk, poor Yona, poor dragons. Like, what's gonna happen? Poor Yon when he finds out. Like, this is all terrible, right? Fine, dandy. The emotional side is fine. It is completely overtaken by the second part. This is a basic bitch. Of a chapter, not of a character. Well, a little bit here, and it disappoints me because Zeno is my second favorite character in the whole series. Okay, the reason that I'm not as broken up by this is because of part number 2, because it's so basic. There are 2 archetypes when it comes to immortal characters in fiction. Actual archetypes. Granted, you can have an immortal character that it does not fall into these categories, and in that case, probably more well written, more three-dimensional. But generally speaking, you have the power-hungry, 7 deadly sins, wine, women, sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that stuff, right? Lives forever, world domination, all that stuff, right? I am immortal, I am a god, I am this, very high on themselves, very narcissistic, right? And they love being immortal, they love living forever, right? You have that category, and then you have the Eeyore, I want to die. It's been done 100 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Both these archetypes are very basic. They're the basic bitches of immortal characters in fiction. And as opposed to immortal characters in non-fiction, right? Yeah. I don't like that Zeno falls into category number 2. Because it's easy. It's a basic bitch. Everybody called it. Everybody knew it. How did everybody theorize it? For 100 chapters, 5 years now, 6 years, 7 years now? Why has everyone brought this up? Why has everybody thought this? Because it's been done 100 times. Everybody's read it. Everybody knows another character like this. Immortal, wants to die. Can't be killed, wants death. Wants release, right? It's done in TV, it's done in manga, it's done in comics, it's done in movies, it's done everywhere. So that took me right out of it. I was hoping they would do something a little more three-dimensional, better written for Zeno. Because Zeno's such a fun character. So that took me out of it right out of the gate, right? Even though he's doing it for noble reasons, right? He wants to die. And he wants to take because he's seen enough, right? He's done enough, he's seen all his friends die, blah, blah, blah. So why he wants to die is understandable, but it doesn't stop it from being a basic motivation. Very basic. The easiest motivation for an immortal character in fiction, right? And even if he's doing it for good intentions, for the dragon side of things, right? He's taking the dragon suffering away because they've been in prison, they've been incarcerated, they've been, ridiculed, they've been, what's the word I'm looking for? They've been persecuted, they've been, they're suffering. They've suffered long enough. He's seen it for 2,000 years, the rebirth of how many generations of dragons, and they've only suffered. They've never, they don't generally live good lives, right? Okay. So he wants to take away that cycle of endless suffering. Fine, dandy, that's a good intention. But nonetheless, that doesn't spoil the fact that he's taking them away at the time he claims it's the end of their lifespan. It's probably really not, and all this stuff, right? So, section number 2 of this chapter is, it's way too basic. Noble intentions gone awry, and the classic, I want to die because I'm sick of being alive, right? For an immortal. Okay. Section number 3 comes with the plot hole. See, I'm saving section number 4 for the positive note. It's a bit of a positive note about the chapter. Is the plot holes that can be explained away, but should have been done in this chapter, especially for such short chapters, like 26, 27 pages. Had they made it 31 pages, easily explain everything I'm about to theorize on. Number 1. How does he snap, 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 boom, chalice appeared, chalice, it's he can warp the chalice at will. Okay. A lot of questions with this one. Did he pick it up? Was he always able to snap his fingers and the chalice appears? Was he always able to snap his fingers and put it into a pocket dimension? So was he able to warp it from Hiryu Castle at any time? If so, if not, first off, how can he do this? A. B. If he was not able to do this without picking up the chalice and it was just happy coincidence that Chao Gol had it, he found it, blah, 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 all this stuff. If he needed to physically have it to be able to snap his fingers and boom, the chalice disappears and reappears at his will, then why did he never steal it before? And the reason I say why didn't he ever steal it before, so we either have to accept the fact that he was always able to, no matter where in the country, where in the world he was always able to snap, boom, the chalice would disappear from Hiryu's shrine and be in his hands. We have to accept that fact. Because if we don't, we assume he never attempted, or it's never been known that he attempted to steal the chalice in the first place. Because he claims that this whole plan he explains this chapter, he attempted it before. To a degree. But this leads us to more plot holes. If he's not able to snap his fingers and get the chalice, which we need an explanation for, if he's not able to do that, then he would have had to steal the chalice from the shrine in the first place. Because this whole thing rests on the idea of taking the 3 dragons' souls and their powers and their physical bodies, whatever, and putting them into the chalice. If he didn't have the chalice on him, the whole, I attempted to do this before, except without the chalice. Okay, Zeno. How? And the way he explains it is he tried to assemble the dragons first. Well, once again, a lot of more questions than answers here with this plan. Okay, first off, where did you come up with this plan? Who told you? A page or a panel easily explaining that when the priesthood burnt down and stuff, well, he's been alive much longer than the priesthood and stuff, and he read through journal after journal, because we don't know when he first figured out this plan. That could have been 1,000 years ago, could have been 500 years ago, could have been 5 minutes ago, for all we know. At least one generation before the current generation, right? He figured out this plan. But it could easily have been, centuries ago. And he attempted it, and he failed. But the way he claimed he attempted it was try to bring all 4 dragons together. He claims that basically that was not possible because the dragons only gathered around the Crimson Dragon King, so he waited. By his own logic, that means fate itself was against him. The heavens themselves were against bringing the 4 dragons together. Shouldn't that have been ringing off ding, 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 ding bells that this whole plan wasn't going to work in the first place? Okay, so there's the first problem. The second problem is that, okay, why did you attempt to bring the dragons together? You didn't have all 3 together when you captured them. He captured them individually just now in these last few chapters. He literally captured them individually into the chalice one at a time. So why did he need to assemble them? He knew where they all were. We've seen that time and time again in flashbacks and stuff. He knows where to find them. So why couldn't he have? Let's not even assume he can snap his fingers and bring the chalice up. Let's assume that he could go to the castle, physically grab the chalice, get it, steal it, right? Even if he can't snap his fingers. Regardless, he gets the chalice. Goes to the White Dragon Village. He waits until the White Dragon dies. Pop. Gotcha. Or near death. Then, he goes and finds the Blue Dragon. Same thing. Then, third step, now he gives up. No. He goes to the Green Dragon. Gets the Green Dragon. And then he does whatever he flew off at the end of this chapter and is going to go do. What, do they expire in the cup? What are they, is it like buying chicken? You better freeze it, otherwise it's going to go bad in the fridge, like does the chalice not have a good refrigeration in it or something? Like, you got to keep those dragon souls fresh or some shit? Like, so, how hard did he try to enact this plan? Once again, we needed more panels. We needed more explanation here. Where did he come up with the idea that the chalice would work? How does he know to do this? Second off, how is he planning on returning them to the heavens while in the chalice? Third, how does he plan to kill his own immortal life? Where did he get any of this information? There's at least 3 to 4 different points that he didn't just randomly, it'd be like me waking up one day and going, I think if I were to take this cup and throw it in the air, I'll be able to fly. Like, you see how none of that makes any sense without any context, right? It's like, well, I threw the glass up in the air and the glass flew, so it means that if I jump up, I'll be able to fly too, like this whole, the line of thinking. Now, maybe that didn't make, I'm saying gibberish, guys, for the sole purpose that without any explanation, how does the chalice have anything to do with anything? How did Zeno know he could capture the dragon souls in the chalice? Yes, the chalice is related to the blood of the dragons. That says nothing. That means nothing about that, right? That means absolutely nothing about capturing them. And what about returning them to the heavens? Why do they need to be in the chalice to return them to the heavens? Where does he have that? Where did he get that information? And how does he know? How is he going to transfer himself into the chalice? Or does he transfer himself into the chalice? How does he give up his own life? And if he was able to do this without the other dragons in the chalice, he would have done this a long time ago. So all this leads me to believe that he clearly, before the priesthood was burnt down or over the years or whatever, we just needed a Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf going through the damn, in Minas Tirith, going through all the old documents and shit, trying to find out some legend, some myth, some documentation, it might have been burnt, might have not been, blah, 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 he needs to be led by this. Who gave him the information? Because, honestly, it's too far-fetched. It's not exactly simplistic, and there's too many factors that wouldn't work, could go wrong, etc., to attempt this, right? How does he know what order to do this in? How does he know that, oh no, you have to capture the White Dragon first, otherwise it's all gone? Like he must have had a guidebook, a guideline, a text, a book, a message from the King of Dragons himself from the heavens entered him in a dream. He had to have had something, and we don't have any of that information yet. So it's a huge red flag. It's a huge plot hole right now. That where did he get any of this information, that any of this is going to work? And how is it working so far? Right? So that all being said, and I know it's a long-winded explanation, guys, but that all being said, then on top of all this, he's like, okay, so I got this, I got A, B, and C. And it's like, yeah, it's all good. But he is saying that the Crimson Dragon King had to appear so he could assemble the dragons and get this done. But we don't get, as I said, how I explained it, there's no explanation as to why he couldn't have done this before. As I said, unless the dragons expire in a cup, and in which case you would think he would try to locate all 3 and time it correctly or some shit, or if he, I don't know, see, once again, there's a lack of information here. There's a lack of knowledge here for this not to be a plot hole until explained otherwise. Which, once again, I'll give the benefit of the doubt for the later chapters right now. That's why I'm not like, oh my god, this is absolutely so terrible. It's not terrible. We need an explanation, because this ain't good enough. There is a huge... We are missing more than half of the information that we require for this to not be a plot hole. Because there's no explanation as to why he couldn't have gone up to each one, waited until they croaked at 32, and fucking got you, boom, 93 years, and he would have been done. He didn't need to wait for Yona. He didn't need to wait. And for all we know, as I said, he could have been waiting 5,000 years. He didn't know when they were going to reincarnate. He had no idea when the Crimson Dragon King was coming back. So let's assume that this was 1,000 years ago he figured out this plan. He's been waiting 1,000 years. And for 1,000 years, he didn't attempt it. Or he attempted it once and gave up. Or there's more to the story. Once again, a huge lack of information. So that leads me to once again, this is a major plot hole until explained otherwise. Because not only do we have basic Zeno, which I really don't like, we also have the fact that, okay, great, you figured out a way to do all this, but you had to wait for Yona? That's so weak. That's so weak. A way to explain as to why they needed to wait for Yona, which once again, a couple more pages could have explained everything I'm saying. One more page could have just basically said, I attempted this many times, but inevitably found out that I can't capture the dragons until their true form is revealed. He can't capture the dragons in the chalice, right, until they turn into their dragon forms, until they've unlocked those dragon forms. Okay, that makes sense. Until they've, the true essence of the dragon has revealed itself. And all we needed was a line of dialogue saying that you can't capture the dragons until their dragon essence has been manifested, since the Zing Kingdom, or here, until the dragons manifest themselves, this will never work. You can't capture the dragons because they're more human than dragon. It's not until they're more dragon than human that you can capture them in the chalice. Perfect. That explanation works. And on top of that, you add one more line of dialogue saying, on top of the fact that it was very difficult to assemble the dragons who don't gather around until the Crimson Dragon King, they also will never reveal, even to save their own lives. The dragons never manifest until they need to protect the Crimson Dragon King. Boom! Everything just now is explained. His whole plan, except for where he came up with the chalice plan, other than how he figured out this chalice plan, who he heard it from, what book or what text or what prophecy he heard that he knows how to do all this, other than that, you can explain away why he had to wait. Why he couldn't have done this before the main story, why he had to wait until, they were all gathered together, why he waited this long into the story to do it, is because the dragons needed to be manifested, and they don't manifest until the Crimson Dragon King is in danger. That's when the dragon blood rears its ugly head, and boom, they transform into true dragons. Boom. I've solved the problem, but the manga needs to tell us. I've solved 90% of the problem with this explanation, but once again, it only works if the manga in the next few chapters, or when we learn from Zeno how he came up with this plan, that we get that as an explanation. Because until then, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. It does not work. There's too many instances of, well, why not? You have to assume way too much for it to work. My theory as to why Zeno waited all these generations and all this time just assumes two things. The explanation in the manga, we have to assume about 25 things. You have to assume that it didn't work because of this reason, and it didn't work because of that reason, and it didn't work because of this, and Zeno never tried that, and blah. You have to basically explain away why Zeno didn't attempt 101 ways to make this work until Yona arrived. And I'm sorry, I'm just not buying that. Because he doesn't say that. He doesn't say, oh, I attempted this 1,000 times and it just never, it just won't work. His weak-ass explanation is, I tried to get the dragons together. Didn't try to capture any. I just literally, I showed up in the forest trying to capture Pokemon with no Pokeballs and then gave up. I turned the game off. That's his explanation is, well, I tried to get all 3 legendary birds together, but I gave up after 5 minutes and didn't buy enough Ultra Balls, so I gave up. That's his explanation. And it's weak as shit. It's like, I waited until, I waited until all the heavy lifting was done for me. And then I went in with 3 Master Balls. You know what I mean? Like, he's literally saying, yeah, let's use the Pokemon analogy. He basically said, I wanted to capture all 3 legendaries in a game, but I didn't want to put the legwork in, so I gave it to my brother or sister, had them beat the game for me, and then I used the rare candy cheat and all this stuff, got 3 Master Balls, and then I showed up and went boom, 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 Zapdos, Articuno, Moltres, good, done, 5 minutes. That's his explanation, is I tried one time, gave up, waited centuries, or possibly longer, until you showed up to do all the heavy lifting, to do all the legwork for me. And that just seems like such a weak-ass explanation. So, I'm hoping that I'm right, and there's more dragon, like there's once again, the factor being that they needed to become more dragon than human before they're able to be captured, and they only do that when the Crimson Dragon King is reborn. That explains away about 90% of the problems I have. But I want to be told it, and I better be told it soon, because otherwise it's just looking so weak, especially on top of the very super basic archetype that Zeno has just been written into. Finally, okay, now that we're at like the 30-minute mark, finally, the interesting nugget, the positive, I guess, or good note to end this off on, is Zeno makes one point that I didn't see a lot of people bring up, and it's a good point. The dragon's rebirth cycle, their short lifespan, Zeno's immortal life, Crimson Dragon King coming back, the prophecy with the Dragon King, never says anything about the cycle being over. Not once anywhere that I haven't had a chance to reread, but nothing in the manga has ever told me that the suffering won't continue. Nowhere does it say, okay, you assemble the dragons, and once you've done that, Zeno's immortal again. It doesn't say that another dragon won't be born again. Alright, we'll put Yona on the throne. Doesn't say anything about the dragon's lifespans returning to normal. Alright, well, peace to Koka Kingdom, and Yona on the throne. Doesn't mention the dragons. As far as everybody knows, and Zeno brought up something very interesting, is that Yona is eventually going to die. They're happy for one generation. And when they all die and Yona dies again, the cycles, there's nothing in the prophecies, there's nothing in the text that clearly Zeno, this is where he got the chalice information. There's nothing that Zeno ever read or anybody's been told in the manga that the dragon's suffering doesn't continue after this. That they wait another 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 years for the next Dragon King to be reborn. And that's not brought up enough by the community. That's not brought up enough in the manga. And now it's been, some light has been shed. That is one big, huge, I guess, bombshell dropped on us this chapter. It's, yeah. There's nothing in here. There's nothing in the manga saying now it's all sunshine and rainbows for the dragons. 30, 40, 50 years, Yona dies. The dragons still reincarnate. They're still persecuted. They still suffer. They're still imprisoned. They still have short lifespans. Zeno still goes on watching all of his friends and family die again and again and again and again. Their suffering never ends. Granted, I'm hoping there is more caveat to this once the shield and sword are revealed or something. There's like the last line of the prophecy or some hidden line that's not revealed until, the first part of the prophecy's done or something like that. But for right now, Zeno's right. And when you put that in perspective, it's like, yeah, they might be happy now with you. But when they die, the next ones are going to suffer again and again. Because you're going to die, And how many years do we have to wait for another one? How many more centuries and millennia do I have to suffer? How long do the innocent children that only live to be 30, you know? It's, yeah. So it's sort of a solemn, it's sort of somber note, but it's something to really think about going forward. Obviously, this wasn't a very happy chapter, obviously, but that was certainly something. When I was reading the chapter, I was like, I didn't really consider that. Like, I was thinking, okay, obviously these are the last green, white, yellow, and blue dragons, right? Like, this is going to be the end of the cycle. Hiryu has been reincarnated into Yona, and the Crimson Dragon illness is going to be ended, and Yona, you know, the cycle of rebirth is going to end and all that stuff. But we like to think that that's all going to happen, but nowhere, not a prophecy, not a future sight, not a dream, nothing has told us that that's the case. And clearly Zeno, wherever he got his information about how to capture the dragons and how to end the cycle, wherever he got that from, obviously said the same thing, or didn't say how to end it. It only told him, hey, here's how to end the cycle, but there's no happy ending in your future, realistically. So, yeah. What a chapter. And obviously there's a huge rant there, but yeah. So 26 minutes, I think I stretched that out. That's what it says right here anyways. Hopefully that's accurate. But about 26 minutes, so a big review. Obviously I had to go over all 4 parts. So once again, before we end it off here, the first part is, yes, it is a sad chapter. The second part is, it's archetypey, basic as shit, and that bothers me. Third, there's a lot of plot holes that need explanation. You know, I'm getting some Seven Deadly Sin vibes, where I came up with better writing than the mangaka by around this time. It was actually around chapter 300 in Seven Deadly Sins that I was writing better fan fiction than the manga was putting out. So, yeah, hopefully that's not the case and we get a better explanation going forward to explain this away. And 4 was the fact that Zeno's intentions are a little more noble than we first on paper. That's, you know, from the basic section, from section 2. Section 4 sort of puts it in a better light, better perspective that, yes, we can be happy for a fleeting moment, but it's a speck in the span of thousands of millennia where we're still going to suffer. You're going to live one lifespan and appease our hearts for the moment. But it's a moment in time over centuries of suffering. It's basically not worth it, right? Is what it boils down to. And that's a very sad note, but there is some merit to it. So, anyways, that's it for me, guys. I hope, and gentlemen and ladies, I hope you enjoyed the review and stuff. This was chapter 253 review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you back here, and we'll see what chapter 254 brings. I hope it's a longer chapter. And as I said, I didn't like or dislike the chapter. How's that? There are parts about it I did enjoy. I'm glad the plot's moving forward. I like that nugget of information at the end that's like, yeah, you know what? There's nothing written here to Zeno. It's a death sentence, or a not death sentence, which is part of the problem. So there's that and stuff, you know. So there were points in the chapter I liked, but there was a lot of very basic writing and very basic archetype stuff that I'm not a huge fan of, and we need more information. We need a lot more explanations and stuff like that going forward for any of this to all make sense and not have at least a couple of minor plot holes, if not a couple major ones. How's that? So that's my caveat. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see all of you back here next time for chapter 254 of Yona the Dawn. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you next time.